Hey everyone, welcome to the McNuttiest dimension. I'm Chris McNutt. This is McNuttiest podcast. Thanks for stopping by once again. I hope everybody's doing well, or, as well as you can possibly do. The perception of doing well, because deep down inside, on the soul level, or whatever name you want to call that, we're good. There is nothing wrong. But that's not always our experience, because we're human and we like to get wrapped up in this, that, and another thing. So I understand. So I hope you have the perception in your human experience of the moment, things being all right. We aim for the chiller vibrations of the frequency spectrum here in the McNuttiest dimension. So some background that might be a little helpful before we bring forth the guest of this episode. It's a little bit of Earth history that kind of goes along with galactic history. Well, all Earth history is galactic history because Earth sits in the damn galaxy. So, but we're going to go back in time to 1945. Just at the end of World War II, which was ended very dramatically with the dropping of atom bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And that was a significant event in the history of humanity that reverberated not just across the Earth plane, but out into the galaxy as well. And the story goes that it was a sign to our galactic friends, cousins, relatives that are out there that we're connected with, those that had been pretty much leaving us alone for the last 10,000 years, because that's kind of how it goes, They were helping us out at the beginning. They took off. They said, you guys good? We said, yeah, we're good. Okay, we're just going to leave you be, minimal interference. We might throw a Christ being or something at you every once in a while. But, besides that, we're kind of just going to leave you on your own. Until we decided to start blowing the shit out of each other with nuclear weapons. And our galactic friends out there, those that have perception to a wide, long history of humanoid life in the galaxy, know that these things often don't end well, and humans are like playing with matches, and we just might burn this whole damn joint down. So it was the time when our galactic friends started to interact with humanity on a more active level, which has continued to this day. But the 40s and the nuclear weapons of that time into the Cold War, et cetera, et cetera. So that project's been going on many fronts. Many different types of interaction has been going on the past 80 years or so. And one of the projects is the Starseed Project. So apparently the call went out across the galaxy, universes for souls that of a higher vibrational energy plane. The offer that was presented was for these beings to come and incarnate in human form to help humanity from the inside as human beings. Because, it was tried. Spaceships did land. Apparently, presidents were consulted, and beings of higher consciousness were dismissed by the political military leaders of the time as a bunch of space hippies who were talking about, we should raise our vibrational consciousness. It's like, what kind of bullshit is that? Why don't you guys just give us some of your technology and your weapons? That would be cool. And it's like, that's not exactly what we're here to tell you. Well, why don't you guys get lost? And they said, well, we might need another approach. So we're going to start sending in Starseeds, which apparently happened soon after World War II. As the story goes, multiple and an increasing number of high vibrational beings that some say from this side, known as Starseeds, and many, many people identify with the journey of the Starseed, started coming in to human form, human incarnation, just after World War II. Now, there's a catch. It sounds great. Hey, do you want to help? You have to be a human. And that means you come through the birth canal with your memory completely wiped. You open your eyes in a family. You have human emotions. You have very limited connection to source energy and perception of your past and any greater reality. It is very claustrophobic. You know very little. You start cranking out human karma, start having your own traumas and experiences that can be all-consuming without, remembering your mission and why you were here. So my guest is Carolyn Barnes, who was born in 1952 in Lancashire, England, and in recent years has come to the realization that, yes, that is exactly why she came into human incarnation as Starseed galactic energy in the first wave of Starseed volunteers who started popping in 75 years ago. Please welcome to McNuttiest Podcast, Carolyn Barnes, 1st-Wave Starseed volunteer. Welcome, Carolyn.
Thank you. Yes, 1st-Wave.
1st-Wave of volunteers. So describe what that means to you. It's obviously something you kind of identify with. And yeah, what's that story all about?
Right. Well, I didn't know anything about 1st-Wave volunteers or anything about that. It's based on Dolores Cannon's teaching until about 3 years ago. And since then, since hearing about that and realizing that, yes, that's what I am, it has made sense of my life on a level that I never could make sense of it till then.
So when you say that's what you are, what is that thing that you are?
Well,
what is a 1st-Wave volunteer?
A 1st-Wave volunteer is, I was born in 1952. After the end of the Second World War and the exploding of the atomic bomb, this put the planet in serious jeopardy. And up until then, the kind of help, if you like, from higher realms, higher frequencies of being, was limited by the law of, well, I call it the law of free will, that they could not directly interfere because, the way that the evolution of humanity needed to play out was based on free will. The fact that the planet itself was now in serious danger allowed them to interfere in a way that had not been allowable or available before. And
so let me interrupt here. And
okay,
when you say it allowed them to interfere, who are they?
They. Higher frequency beings of higher evolution. We could call them aliens, ETs, extraterrestrials, beings who have been through their own evolution of this, with this polarity that we are in on Earth, the polarity of light, dark, good, bad, and so on.
And they're here to help. These are sort of their neighbors, their distant relatives. Would these be sort of like what we talk about when we're talking about spirit guides and those helpful beings is sort of in the same category?
Yes, I would say they're in the same category. Yes, definitely. So they sent out the call to souls across all the universes who were willing to come in to embodiment on the planet. Now, that might sound like, wow, great, I can come and be this great person, right? But you have to come in as a human. So you have to come in like,
There's a catch. You have to be human. You arrive. It's a realm of karma. It's a realm of suffering. It's a realm of
right.
experiences. It's very visceral. It's very dense. You're
Yes,
welcome to
exactly.
come, but you got to take
You
that part
have to
on.
take all that on. And to get in here in the first place, to come through the birth canal, you go through the memory wipe. You do not remember who you are. So you experience human reality as reality. The whole thing. You don't remember that you are not that. So this whole thing, when my friend first told, a friend of mine told me about, I'm going to tell you about this 3 waves of volunteers, and she started describing it, and she thought she's going to have to like persuade me, convince me. As soon as she said it, as soon as she said first wave volunteers, it's like, oh my, the hairs on my arms start standing up. Like I got this prickly feeling all over. I said, that's what I am. That's who I am. I know I'm a first wave volunteer.
And was that the first time that you had that awareness, or is it something
Yes.
you've
Yeah. No, I'd never heard of first wave volunteers or anything like that. Now, I did have a sense of that I was from somewhere else
how long was that sense of being from somewhere else? How long has that been with you in your life?
since I was a child.
And what was that like for you when you were a child? What was that experience?
I had abilities now, and I didn't consider it an ability at the time because I was ridiculed and put down for it, but now I see it was an ability. I could connect in with spirit realms. I was called the absent-minded professor and the dreamer because I could sit and look outside the window at the clouds and I would be gone. Like the world around me would not be there anymore. People could speak to me and I wouldn't hear them. Um, you know, this wasn't an advantage.
Not compared to the normal, what we call quote unquote normal human life.
Exactly. Yes.
I think now we're coming to this point where it's like this is the thing that many of us are striving for, and you popped into the world with this natural ability. So besides you having these experiences of being able to connect, did you have any experiences of guidance and being guided through this in any way?
The kind of guidance I received, you see, my whole life I'm frustrated by this. I am not a seer. I do not see. This is so annoying. But it has been annoying to me in the past because I would receive direct downloads and direct guidance, which was just be, oh, I would know something. I couldn't, it wasn't, there's no way to explain it beyond that. I would just know something. I didn't see visions. I didn't hear voices. It was nothing like that. But what I understand now is I was very sensitive to energies. I felt energies directly. And that was true even as a child, which would make me very uncontrollable, even to myself. Like, I was very uncontrollable because I was reacting directly to energy that I felt, which of course was totally not real to anybody else.
And at the time, were you surrounded by your fellow humans, family, friends who weren't as sensitive to that?
No, they weren't sensitive to it. No. So I was a little peculiar. I never quite fit in. The feeling of being an alien. I mean, one way that as a child, you create stories to try to explain things to yourself. I decided that my mother had been given the wrong baby in the hospital.
And you really belong somewhere else. So you had that feeling.
Yes, I had that feeling. I did not belong here. It's like these people, they're alien to me. They're not, they don't understand me, and they get very annoyed when I don't, They try to make me fit in with what they think is real, what they think is how a person should be, and could get quite nasty about it.
So, how did that journey go then from childhood through adolescence? What part of the world did you grow up in?
Well, I was born in Lancashire in the north of England, and when I was 10 years old, we moved to North Wales, which was in a national park, the Snowdonia National Park. Now, from that time on, we moved there. My family moved there because the guidance, they wanted me there. Because for the next 8 years or so until I left home, I had this incredible, and it's very hard to explain this to people who don't know what it is, but I had this really, really deep, deep, deep connection to nature during that time because we lived way out in the middle of nature.
And that's also sort of some pretty ancient, powerful places that England and the Druid tradition. There's been some
Right.
real deep set mystical energy in that
Hmm.
part of the world
Yes.
for eons, and
Eons, yes.
so kind of makes sense. You're sitting in Wales and you were soaking up some of those vibrations.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I could. This would take the whole time of the whole program to tell the things that happened to me during those times.
Did you ever feel a connection to, say, some more of the ancient energies of that part of the world?
I had no way. I had nothing to connect to because it wasn't in the reality. We weren't taught about those things. So I had this dichotomy going on. I step outside the back door and I would go in the woods and be having this whole experience of something I couldn't put into words or even begin to explain. And as we do, we tend to think, well, everybody else is having that experience too. We assume, but of course, nobody was. So the fact that I was constantly going outside and wandering around in the woods and the hills by myself, again, this person's a little weird, right?
Starseed control to Carolyn Barnes. You're going to Wales, you're gonna live on a farm. Humans are messed up, why don't you see what you can do? And were some of those experiences, was it, were you in touch with fairy realms, or was it sort of like elemental realms of the?
Yeah, it was. It again. I wasn't seeing things or hearing things. It was purely energetic, and I could be in ecstasy just from being in a certain place, like in a bluebell wood in June when all the bluebells are out. It's like, oh, gosh, it's coming back to me now. And one time we had a piano and I'd had piano lessons, and I found in the piano store some sheet music. I had not heard of it before. I didn't know what it was. Actually, it was Jerusalem, which is the English equivalent of the American Amber Waves of Grain, that type of thing. It's very much equivalent to that. It was written by William Blake, who was a visionary and mystic at the end of the 18th century. And I, played the melody of this tune on the piano, and something opened up. Like, again, it's pure energy. I wasn't seeing visions or anything. I walked outside and walked down the lane, and every leaf on every plant it was so vivid. Like, it's absolutely, vibrating with energy, and it's like, and this music playing in my mind, as this happened. That's the kind of experiences I was having pretty well continuously from the age of 12 till 17ish, really.
And it was a solitary experience. You didn't have any
Totally.
peers or family members to share this with.
I didn't even have a vocabulary that I could begin to explain it to anybody. Because on the other hand, there's two lives going on in parallel. Because my other life is I'm going to school every day, we are reading Julius Caesar's dispatches from Britain back to Rome in the original Latin about, what he did to the Druids and how they were savages. That this happens over and over again. And, so there's this like, these two worlds don't meet. pure, pure dichotomy.
So when you pulled out of it and you found yourself, say, out of the world of teenagedom and school, and it was time to venture into the world as an adult on your own, what direction did this lead you?
Well, I left home. I went to London University, and I tell you, I completely crashed. I was in the middle of the biggest city in Britain. I had spent, all these years out in nature in almost isolation.
In bliss, not just in nature, but in your own energetic bliss.
Absolutely. Found myself in London, and I just everything collapsed, everything fell apart. I went through a deep depression.
So what was the touchstone? What was your journey to find your way back out of that?
Um, Poetry. C.D. Lewis poetry started to bring me out of it, and the what actually happened. Well, plus it was spring, so we'd been through the dismal winter. We had very dismal winters in England, months of dark. And spring came. I found this poetry which was really helping me, and I met on the steps of. I was staying in a student hall of residence, and standing on the steps one day as I came home was this lady, same age. I mean, same age. It wasn't a lady, a girl, and she says to me, "Oh, are you interested in religions?" I nearly jumped on her. I said, yes. So she said, this was my introduction to the Moonies. Plus, she was from Wales. And so then I started going once a week to hear these talks about the Moonies. Really, it's a laugh, because then they said, the idea was that we were all brainwashed. Well, it was the most pathetic excuse for brainwashing I'd ever heard. I would go once a week, sit in front of a desk while another lady sat behind a desk and read out of a book. Well, if that's brainwashing, it's pretty ineffective. She read out this divine principle was what it was.
Now, this is Reverend
Some Young Moon.
Sung Young Moon, and is Christian based, isn't he?
It's basically Bible based, yes, yeah. But it leads up to him being the return of the Lord of the Second Advent. That's what it all leads up to. And they when you get to chapter 12, you're supposed to like, oh, he's the Lord of the Second Advent.
So when you were receiving this, how did it feel? Like, how did it speak to you in this open, energetic way that you, to this point are experiencing the world?
It was purely intuitive, based on intuition, and I know this is what I'm supposed to do. I just know.
It spoke to you that clearly that this path, this teacher, this lineage.
Oh yeah, I had no doubt whatsoever. Yes, this is it. This is it. This was it. I mean, in 1971 in England, I would have had a choice between the Moonies, the Hare Krishnas, the Divine Light, the Children of God. Those are the obvious ones.
Or just dropping acid and going to music festivals.
Well, I wasn't really into that. So, the Moonies was the perfect one for me at the time. In hindsight, I'm glad I wasn't in the Children of God, or the Hare Krishnas for that matter. So then I joined and dropped out of college, and there were 26 of us in the UK at that time, 26 members.
And how long did you remain a faithful follower of Reverend Moon?
14 years.
You gave that, it's a pretty good run. And in those 14 years, what type of, say, spiritual or energetic expansion or experience did you go through?
Well, I learned what it means to do a mission.
A mission as like this is a task, or a mission?
No, our mission was to, get everybody to understand that this is the Lord of the Second Advent. In other words, return of Christ. And to that end, we would go on the streets and what we call witness to people. Later on, within about a year, just over a year, we figured out how to give up our day jobs and actually be able to do this full time by selling we would print little pamphlets, leaflets, and sell them on the street. And that was a big improvement over doing, minimum wage jobs. Where you, even one situation I was in where I had this horrible boss who was constantly trying to fill you up and this kind of thing. So I loved it. I have to say, I loved it. And I loved going out on the street and selling these little pamphlets. And
So at the time, did you deeply believe with your whole heart and soul that Reverend Moon was the second coming of
yeah,
Christ
absolutely.
energy?
Yeah. hmm Yeah, I totally believed
And
it.
did you find that belief and that faith, that did it expand you and take you to deeper places within yourself?
No, no, it was a belief system which was like, it gave me, looking back from this perspective of 70 years old, what I needed then was a structure and a place where I could become an adult without too much negativity being projected at me, which
Right.
is was a perfect place to do it.
As you say, if you're kind of a one of those first waves of starseeds and you're popping in here without a lot of support, you're kind of, here you go, first wave on the beach, floundering around, figuring stuff out. It
Mm-hmm.
was an environment that at least fostered that spirituality and acceptance, and you were able to blossom in the way you
It
needed to.
allowed me, yeah, absolutely. It allowed me to build up. Um, See, you talk about giving up the ego, but you can't give up what you haven't got. So I needed to be able to build up some self-esteem, self-worth, a sense of identity that I hadn't got because all my whole time in Wales, I was in this other world, really like amorphous spiritual energies. I hadn't been able to develop that in that situation. And so my years in the Moonies, that's what it was doing for me because I found I was really, really good at, selling the pamphlets, of getting members, new members, of doing the fundraising. I could do all, I was really good at it.
So a theoretical question here then, with this experience of yours as like coming in as a volunteer.
hmm
And one of the descriptions of this density of human form, we have that really strong ego mind consciousness that really holds us in, as like this anchor that holds us into this level of reality. Did you find that yours was as strong as say the rest of us, and did you still find that experience of like you still had a real strong ego sense of self and identity from the get-go in human form?
Well, no, I didn't have it at all. That's what I developed in the Moonies because I didn't have it at all before because of my family situation, being the weird one. My mother and I never bonded from the get go. She was 19 years old and got married at 18. She didn't have to get married. I checked that because when I was, starting to deal with the shadow stuff, I looked that up because why did she hate me so much? I thought, well, maybe she had to get married, but the dates aren't right, not unless she had the longest pregnancy on record. So just trying to figure all that out. That was also what I was able to do. I had a container of safety while I was in the Moonies where I could start to take the lid off all that stuff and deal with it, begin to deal with what that was all about. But when I left home at 18, I did not have a sense of self, of ego identity at all. I mean, I would have been hard put to defend myself from anything. because I didn't have a sense of having any right to do that.
So then let's take it from your 14 years in the Moonies, and what was that journey sort of? What was the next phase? Because there's a few chapters in this story, so maybe let's move into the next one.
The next part was when I left the Moonies, which was not easy. I can tell you, after 14 years, the only people I knew were other Moonies. I joined at 19. I'd never held down a proper job in the adult world. So, but I couldn't go on with it. I mean, I had reached that point where I knew I could not continue on this. It was driving me crazy. I had to get out. My feeling was I've got to, I've got to make my own life. I have to make my own choices. So, but leaving was quite traumatic for all those reasons I just said. And because we had strong connections between us all, we felt like family. And suddenly I'm not in the family anymore. Suddenly you're out on your own. It can be a little traumatic. But I had gotten off the train when I left the church. We used to call it the church, and I was in Denver, Colorado, and I flew home to England, got the train from London to Manchester, where my brother was, got off the train in Manchester, and on the station, right there in front of me, was this poster of Elizabeth Clare Prophet. She was the messenger of the Great White Brotherhood of Ascended Masters.
That's quite the title.
Yeah, going back to it's rooted, the whole that lineage was rooted in going back to Annie Besant. What's the other woman's name?
Sort of like the Theosophical
The
Society.
Theosophical Society. Yes,
That was her lineage. And was she in Manchester at the time speaking?
it was a poster for a lecture tour that she was doing within the next couple of weeks. And as soon as I saw it, I'm going. I'm not going to miss that for anything. I'm going. So that's how the next step began. And so I became heavily involved in that group. And I went to in 1988. I went to the ranch that they had in Montana, which was the mystery school. It was called. And so
And
I
what
went.
were the teachings like? What's the were the core of the teachings or the practices? And how was that sort of how was it different from what you had been doing previously in the Moonies?
It was quite a bit different, but not too different in that it was beyond my reality. I mean, it's the Theosophical Society branched off into the I Am movement in the U.S. in the 1930s, 40s, I think it was, where the Ascended Masters would send out speeches, talks through the mails every week or so.
They got YouTube now. That's old school. They had to send letter. The Ascended Masters were sending letters in the mail.
Yes. So that was the I Am movement with Guy and Lotus Ballard, and then Mark Prophet came out of their group, and he became the messenger, and he married Elizabeth Clare Prophet, and he passed on. He was a lot older than her, and she became the messenger.
And what in a nutshell is the message, or is it easy to
Well,
summarize?
it's not easy to summarize. It's in the lineage of the Theosophicals,
Ascended Masters.
Ascended Masters. It's really very esoteric. It's not anchored in the physical.
So, what kind of practices would you do as part of this mystery school?
We would do, well, it was mainly studying, but we would do a lot of what we call decrees. Now, this was where, okay, if you decree something, you say something as a decree, then it will be. That was the theory behind it. So we had all these decrees, and we would say them incredibly fast over and over and over again. And the goal was ascension. Kind of like mantras. They're like mantras because they were repetitive. And the idea was, ultimately we're supposed to be ascending. My idea of ascension in those days at that time was, Jesus ascending off the mountain. You leave your body and you're gone. And there were times when I was sitting there doing these decrees, sometimes for hours at a time. And I'm thinking, there's something missing here. There's a piece missing here. Because I know if I sat here from now until eternity,
You're not going to pop off this mountain like Jesus just by saying these phrases.
yeah, this is not going to happen. There's something missing. It's not going to happen. No amount of wishful thinking is going to make this.
It would be nice if we just had to sit on our butts and say these phrases over and over again and then pop off the mountain like Jesus. We would have all been doing that a long time ago.
Yeah. It's like Violet Flame decrees was one of them. Oh, Violet Flame, and you go on and on and on like that. And
You're saying it wasn't enough. You say there was something missing, but at the same time, was there also something there that was having some power and some transformation?
well, I felt it. I felt it was, and it was there at the mystery school that I first heard. Became aware of the whole concept of alien interference. Learned the story of Enlil and Enki, and
the Anunnaki story.
The Anunnaki story, and that freaked me out. I'm glad I had 30 to 40 years to integrate that, because when I first heard it, I didn't know what to do with it. It was terrifying, and I put it on the back burner in my mind, because it's like I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how to deal with this. It's beyond me.
But this was like one of the core sort of creationist stories, or kind of not even necessarily myths, that the mystery school worked with.
No, I mean they told us all about that so we understood the dark side and what was the dark agenda of alien interference that has been happening in human history, human consciousness, since going back for so long time.
Since our inception, some would say that was pretty much. Part of it was our birth story was not so pure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I got while I was at the mystery school, I really, for the first time, started doing yoga, and I really got into that. So when the mystery school was over,
What happened for the mystery school to be over?
Well, it was only it was a 3-month course.
Oh, I see. You went there for 3 months. You completed the course of study.
3 or 4 months, I can't remember exactly. Yes, I completed the course and stayed for the big midsummer event. And then, well, I had to go and find a way to make some money.
And you're in the States at this time.
I'm in the States. They told us do not go back to Europe, because this was 1988, and the Ascended Masters told us it wasn't safe to go back to Europe. I mean, if you remember 1988, I don't know how old you are, you might not.
I remember 1988, yeah. I was in university.
Okay, well, it was definitely on the cards at that time that there could have been a nuclear war. What ended that possibility was the deployment of what were those missiles they deployed in England at the time? Can't remember the name.
And it was also
now.
the time when the Soviet Union was crumbling, and
well, it hadn't crumbled.
There was a lot of change was in the air.
Yeah. It was the year after that, because of the deployment of those missiles, was what ended the USSR, brought down the Berlin Wall. All that happened after that. But what the Ascended Masters were telling us in 1987 and 88 was, if you can possibly get out of Europe, do so. And a nuclear war was on the cards at the time. Of course, it didn't happen, thank God, goodness.
Thanks, Ascended Masters. If you had anything to do with sort of circumnavigating that, popping us onto a new timeline that didn't involve nuclear war in Europe, we appreciate that.
Very much appreciate that. But anyway, so I stayed in the States for that reason. And I lived in California for 3 years. And then I moved to Phoenix. And during the time I was in California, I was still doing my degrees. I was doing a lot of yoga as well. I moved to Phoenix and
And in general, during that time of your life, you popped in as sort of a bit of an alien with a mission as like a first wave volunteer.
mhm.
Had an early life of just expanded energy awareness, not sure what middle age, what was it settling into? What was your comfort level in human form and your journey and mission? Was that making sense, or were you still just kind of feeling your way?
Well, I would say for most of my life, I was flying blind. I mean, it was like, and I felt like I was still seeking. I was a seeker. It wasn't until I almost died 6 years ago that I came back. When I came back from that, it's like I know I'm not a seeker anymore.
But at the time, you spoke earlier about you would get some guidance. You didn't know that it was specifically a guide, but you knew things. So were you
Yes.
still being guided along on this journey in a similar way?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because that was the central thing in my life.
Just getting knowledge, and you just knew you had to go to Montana. Was it same thing? You knew you had to go to California, so away you went?
Well, that was kind of more practical. I knew some people in California. That's why I went there. And then I got involved with this guy in California, and we were looking for to start a business. And I happened to look in the out of state newspapers in the library. Again, it's before internet. And lo and
Yes,
behold,
kids out there was a time you had to go to the library if you wanted to find something out. Take a damn newspaper off the shelf and look up the classified sections.
that's absolutely. And I was looking for business opportunities, and I looked at Phoenix, and there was 2 pages of Phoenix. And most of the places like 2 inches of column. There was 2 pages for Phoenix. Um, because at that time, we're talking 1991, Phoenix had just been through a real estate crash, and everything was super cheap. There was all these opportunities. So I said, well, let's go to Phoenix because we wanted to start a restaurant. And so we got this premises for 400 a month, locked in for 10 years.
What kind of restaurant were you doing? What were you serving up? Were you serving good old fish and chips, some Birmingham style fish and chips?
No, no, he was Chinese. We did Chinese food.
With a little bit of a British twist, or was it like straight up Chinese?
Purely Chinese food. Did that for 5 years. Um, well, if you know anything about restaurant business or had any experience of it, you know it really takes your whole life. You don't have much time left over for anything. And yeah, after 5 years, I was burned out. The relationship was falling apart. And again, my inner guidance led me to go to massage school. So I went to massage school and became a massage therapist. And it was right about that time that again, pure chance, I stumbled across the deer tribe. I mean, this is how much pure chance it was. Well, obviously not chance because it's guidance. I went to my regular yoga class one evening and found out it was cancelled when I got there. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I don't want to go straight back home. And there's this alternative bookstore not too far away. So I go there and I'm browsing the shelves. And somebody announces, oh, there's a talk in the back room here on Native American shamanism
That was happening at that very time.
at the bookstore that evening, right then. It's happening now. So it didn't register at first, and then they came out and said it again, and it still didn't register. And then someone comes out banging a drum. I thought, oh, why don't I do that? So that's how I met the deer tribe. And that became the biggest part of my life for the next 10 years.
And what type of activity? And you say it was sort of Native American shamanism. Was that sort of true to its form?
Yeah, absolutely. It was founded, the Deer tribe was what they call a Métis medicine society, which means it's not just native. In fact, none of us were native. It was founded by this guy called Swiftear, Harley Swiftear Reagan. And I went through something called Red Lodge, which was 3 years of shamanic study and experience, which I loved. Oh gosh, I really loved it. We did sweat lodges on a regular basis,
Sun dances?
sun dances once a year. I danced twice. I was in the drum team 3 or 4 times.
And how did that feel? Again, Carolyn Starseed popping in from somewhere else. You're in human form in England, Wales, and bam, you're doing Sundance ceremony with the Deer Tribe in Arizona.
It was brilliant. Yeah. This was like a really pivotal point and shift in my life. Because up to then I'd still been very in like very Eurocentric understanding of history and all this, and the meaning of life was very still in the head, in intellect, and the shamanism will take you right out of that. Will take you right out of that. And I remember sitting at a workshop once during a break, and we've been studying some really, really, what's the word I'm looking for? Subtle, high energy, subtle understandings of reality that was just wow, off this world. I mean, off this planet. Because a lot of the native teachings, they understand that there are aliens. They call it the Star Nation people, and a lot of them understand that they came from there themselves originally. That these people were their guides and teachers, and I mean, the subtlety of the thought was just wow. Who are the savages here?
Did it speak to you? And that, as you say, this is Starseed activation going on for you?
Oh, absolutely. The first time I went to the Deer Tribe Center to start Red Lodge, I nearly fell apart energetically because they had a huge Sundance drum in the room. And, like before the actual thing started, they were doing some drumming. And it was, I can't tell you. It's like, then somebody gave me a drumstick and let me go on the drum. And I could barely hold myself together. I mean, the energies were so strong, so powerful. I was shaking. It was all I could do not to burst into tears. I mean, it was just like, it was so strong. And all the medicine things they had up on the walls, like the buffalo heads, and there's a very special picture of grandfather Tom Two Bears, who was the one who taught Swift Deer. It was just powerful. I was moved to my core. It was like shook me to my core.
And how long did you spend in sort of those close confines of the Deer Tribe teachings?
10 years.
And was there a reason that you left, or that it run its course and it was just time to move on?
Well, I kind of reached a plateau with it with myself. When you start bumping up against the power structure within the organization and personalities, and it always happens sooner or later. And I'm just not one to get into that. It doesn't, I just don't go there.
You're not that human. You're in human form, but you're maybe not that human.
I'm not that human. I'm really not. And so I reached that point with the Deer Tribe, and then lo and behold, what do I do? But in the Deer Tribe shop, where we had the sweet medicine shop where all the shamanic paraphernalia was sold, I was there one day, and on the counters, this book, it's called The Voyagers. And it's like one of those moments again. Oh my God, I've got to have that book. I've got to read that book. Like, I'm going to buy that book. The Voyagers book. They were actually volume one and volume two, written by Ashayanda Deane. And she called her teachings Freedom Teachings. And she brought through incredible information, codes, levels of understanding of, plus the dark side, the interference, what is, what has been happening to humans, what's really going on inner levels with our history, just incredible stuff.
Was it like ascension concepts? We're now kind of 21st century here now. Is this kind of Mayan 2012? Was any of that kind of wrapped into?
Absolutely, very, very much part of it, because at 2012 the whole shield split apart and flew apart. We she the her group, we called it the shield. We were the shield. And I say that 2012 it totally blew apart.
So you were a strong follower of Ashayanda Deane, and you said about 10 years you were working closely with her.
7 or 8 years, yeah, something like that.
Very immersed in the teachings, the grid work, the ascension energies, the
Oh yeah,
codes,
absolutely,
and
yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
you say 2012 something happened, the shield breaks, and the group split. But before that, what was that experience? What did you find in your own growth, in your own ascension, to use the phrase of the moment, as we're in all about talking about ascension these days? Uh, how did it work on you in that way?
Well, it was very, very powerful. I mean, it activated codes in my own memory, my own sense of who I
And
was.
is this like sense of who you are? Is this made like your galactic roots? Was this the first time in your life where were you really identifying with?
Not really, not really. I was still dealing with a massive lack of self worth, still. And that was still preventing me from really being able to step into being able to say who I am. Like, I am a first waver, or I am more than human. I still couldn't do that because I had taken on the programming of the human self hate program. It was still there. In spite of everything up to that point, I still couldn't really accept who I was.
So then you're speaking of that in past tense as if you accept it now. So then what has happened to you over the past 10 years to lead you to this place where you can roll in the world? I am Carolyn. I am a first wave volunteer, and you have this peaceful sense of who you are.
Well, to cut a long story short, I nearly died. Coming to Belize was like, okay, I would say that my guides, the people leading me, my higher self, whatever you want to call it, the gloves came
Oh,
off.
damn. It's time. It's time to get real. Carolyn's been embodied here for a while. She's still a little thick. She's done a lot of stuff. She's hung with the Moonies, Mystery School, Deer Tribe, but okay, it's time. She still doesn't have it.
She's still not got it. They still haven't stepped out of this victim mentality. So now the gloves come off.
And you say you almost died?
I did. Um, it was so traumatic. It was so traumatic because now I'm outside my own culture. Now I know nobody here. Now I have no money. It was hard. Um, there was one person who I would say was sent literally, physically as a guide. And I did get spiritual help because I got 3 angels as well at one point. But it was really tough. And I was living in this person's house, paying rent. And the place was an absolute tip. I happened to put my foot through a plank in the floor one day. It collapsed under me. And I got this tiny little cut on my leg. I mean, it was not even a cut, it was a graze. Just broke the skin. I paid not much attention to it at the time. I wouldn't do that now, believe me. Living in Belize, it's a whole different we're in a different reality here, and not being born here, there's bacteria and viruses here we have no natural immunity to. A local person probably wouldn't have much effect on them. Anyway, 3 days later, my leg swelled up and I could barely move. This friend said, "Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll put some hydrogen peroxide on it for you," which she did, and it sealed it up. But then the infection went back down inside, and she was going to come and see me to do a what they call that, a pendulum healing on it. And in the meantime, now this is why I know now that dying is not something to be afraid of, because I went into this peculiar state where I wasn't clocking reality. Like, I mean, this is obvious. I'm crawling on the floor. Um, you know, my mind isn't operating properly, and it's just not hitting me what's happening. It just wasn't clocking it. Anyway, my friend arrived with the pendulum, and she took one look at my leg, and she got the pendulum out, and it's ridiculously funny, actually. She says, "Oh, does this person need to see a doctor?" And the pendulum, it nearly jumped out of her hand. It went crazy. Like she needed to ask the pendulum this question.
Because anybody else would just have taken one look at your leg and said, "Oh my God, this person needs a doctor. I don't need no pendulum. Just get in the car."
So anyway, she says, "Okay, we're taking you to the doctor right now."
So you did?
And the lady nurse that met me at the door, I noticed at one point she gave me a very peculiar look. Like, how on earth did you get into this state? But again, I just wasn't clocking it. I had no idea that I was in an altered state and that I was actually on the way to dying. Then when I got to the hospital, I'd slept for almost 2 days. And then when I came back, I gradually began to realize something in me had shifted. For a while, I thought I was awoken at that point. I think I don't think that anymore, really. I think it was just a walking of my higher self. Like it wasn't a walking from somewhere else, I don't think. But there was enough of a change and a shift in my energy, like all my anxiety gone. A lot of my self-worth, almost all those issues had gone.
And you noticed this immediately. This was just something you noticed yourself, like waking up and all of a sudden the sun is brighter and you were just feeling this
Very
change.
much so. I was on a certain group where we used to write things, and I began to. What actually first clued me into it was I was writing from a position of authority within myself that I had never done before. Oh, that's interesting.
So what new authority do you think this is? If you use just to use that term authority, where do you think that shifted from to where?
Well, because I think an aspect of a higher self aspect had taken over. That's what I think. I mean, it's still me,
That's good to know. It's good to know that our higher selves are still us.
right?
Whew. Wasn't sure.
Very funny. Yeah. Yeah. No, it was just, I got rid of, I stepped out of, I don't know how it happened, but a lot of that worthlessness issue had dissolved. And it was almost like, what are you playing around at? I mean, even just recently, a couple of months ago, it came to me like, you've been playing small for way too long. Because it was a survival tactic from childhood.
For many of us, I think that's pretty common in the human realm. There's a lot of things that are whipping around here and come
Hmm.
and traumatize us and experiences. So, uh, and you say so that's cleared, and you have a different perception now of not playing small.
Right, and I don't need to hide anymore. Now, I heard a description of what it's like to come in as not human, in a sense, that you will come in to such deep cover that you yourself will not even know. Like, you will not know that you are undercover. Like, that's how deep your cover will be.
Oh, the illusion here is it is absolutely brilliant how source light all of this is disguised from us while we have this human experience.
Right. So I think that my person, well, this is how I would explain it now. You know, as this being who came in as a first wave volunteer, what are we here for? To shine the light. And you've got this is your little piece of the shadow for you to transmute. That's your bit. You transmute that bit. And that is what you come into, and you have to go through it and experience it so that you can transmute it. It's not just spiritual bypassing.
No, you got to get into the thick of it.
We have to actually be in it. You have to actually get down in the mud and experience what humans experience, and then wake up. And then, okay, that's your little piece. There you go. You can transmute that.
Do you feel like that's been mission accomplished? Have you feel like you've wallowed in the mud, the human mud that you need to
Well,
wallow in? And
I really hope so.
what are your guides telling you? What have you gotten any sense of that?
No, not really, not at the moment. I mean, just the last 3 weeks prior to this week, I went through a deep dive back into this whole polarity again.
Oh, it's intoxicating.
I,
We love our polarity down here.
again, Lord above. It's like I lost my nerve. Certain situations and conditions happened in my life, and I lost my nerve, and I fell down into it again. And it took me 3 weeks to get out.
Better than 50 years to get out, though. 3 weeks is nothing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, where do you sit with it now in the present? Like, what is your, having been through all of this, having this awareness that you've first wave of volunteer, early starseed energy, how are you sitting in this current moment as we, these ascension changes, these earth shift energies are, the dials are being turned up and, things are really starting to cook around here.
Right. Well, I love it. I love it. Um, no, I really do. I'm not just being facetious. I think my body is having some struggles with it, but they did say I could leave if I wanted to.
And again, these are your team, your guides.
This is just yeah, my team, the whatever it is that guides me in there. Not even in words. It's like pure telepathy.
So to them, like you've sort of graduated, you've done the work you needed to do.
I've completed the first wave mission. That's what they have told me.
Congratulations! Do you get a medal? Is there a ceremony? You're going to Buckingham Palace to meet the Queen? Is she giving you a first wave medal?
I should, right? I should, but it doesn't work that way.
Maybe when you pop back to the other side, that's what's going to happen. You come back to the other side. There's going to be a band. There's going to be a parade. You're going to be in the back of a convertible. You're going to be waving to everybody. Confetti's going to be coming down the streets. Carolyn's back. First wave volunteer mission accomplished.
Well, I got through it and I'm still intact. I didn't lose myself, and I'm sure there are many who did. I mean, I know there are many who did. But that's what happens with, first wave of troops in any situation. Takes high casualties.
Yes. So you've been told that it's mission accomplished and you could go. So where are you at with that? Are you sticking around for?
Well, they said I can stay if it said there's more you can do if you want to stay. And I've kind of seesawed back and forth a bit with that, actually. Do I want to stay? Do I want to go? Overall, I think it's coming down on the side of staying. So, but I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know what that is or how it will play out. I have no idea.
Is there peace in your heart with the present moment?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Well, maybe that's all it will be. Now you get to enjoy the earth plane in human form with some peace in your heart. You live in a lovely part of the world in Belize, and
Hmm.
that itself is that's that sounds like victory. You know, there's many of us still striving for just peace in the heart.
Definitely, I have that. Yeah, it's just 3D that always trips me up.
It trips out pretty much everybody. Good luck not falling on your face in 3D.
Right?
Multiple times. In fact, it's just wham, 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 wham is pretty much all that goes on down here. Just we fall on our face and
Yeah.
we get up and we fall, bam, bam, bam. Maybe you won't have to fall on your face as much anymore.
Well, that would be really nice. In fact, I reminded myself just this morning. It came to me. I was thinking about, I don't know how I'm going to make a living as I get older, and they said I remember they reminded me of when they sent the angels when I first came to Belize and told me where to come to here to San Ignacio. Um, that's a whole story in itself. I don't know how much time we got left.
Well, it sounds like you're in the right place. It sounds like you have some healing in your heart in the moment. And do you, as you know, as final notes, do you like any any advice to those that are kind of on this journey? You're a first wave. They say there's second wavers. They say there's third wavers of starseed. That there's a
Third
lot of
waves. Yeah.
beings incarnating
Mm.
from higher frequencies, galactic places into human form right now to help with this shift we're going through in human consciousness and the journey. Is there,
Mhm.
if from sitting as the wise elder of the tribe now, is there any wisdom to bestow on the younger ones going through the same journey?
Trust yourself. Trust your guidance. Trust yourself. Don't allow yourself to be put down by the false matrix reality. I mean, allow yourself to see through it. Don't try to fit into it. Be who you are. You know, accept who you are. Embrace who you are. Don't take on the false matrix need to fit in because that's all gone. It's that's the old. Why do you want to fit into the old for? Those guys are on the way out.
False matrix is a dead end street.
Yeah. So it's all to play for. It's all to play for right now. I think it will turn out well. I don't know how, but I think it will.
Thanks so much, Carolyn. That's a wonderful story, a wonderful journey you've been on. Real pleasure to have you share that with me and with other listeners here. So thanks so much. It's been a real treat.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure here too.
This is Starseed Control to Carolyn Barnes. You've got a passing grade, and when you're back, we'll have ourselves a big parade. And the Palladian Queen will serve you lemonade. Planet Earth is screwed, and there's nothing else you can do. Whoa, hey, maybe we're not completely screwed. Between a rock and a hard place, yeah, down to our last few chips, dealing with a big ass pile of shit that we created all on our own. But it's always darkest before the dawn. We're pulling it out of it. We got this, folks. We can deal with this. Say no to fear and polarity. A musical thank you for this episode's inspiration to David Bowie, one of the first Starseed wave of volunteers. He was born in 1947. He rocked this world his whole trip in a very Starseed, high vibrational way. Another super big, awesome thank you to my guest, Carolyn Barnes, and her wonderful story of her life so far. If you're ever in San Ignacio, Belize, Carolyn teaches Kundalini Yoga there twice a week, so you can drop in to one of her classes. If you want to connect, McNuttiest is all that you need to know. McNuttiest on Facebook, McNuttiest on Instagram. You want to send me a note, an email to send it to yo at McNuttiest.com. I'm Chris McNutt. Thanks for stopping by the McNuttiest Dimension. We'll catch you next time. McNuttiest.